Welcome everyone. This is Pratish here, and we have a very interesting topic about entrepreneurship. And I think it couldn't come at a more important time when many of us are facing a tremendous amount of challenges. And this could be probably one of the most opportune times to probably start looking at different ventures or different ideas that we could actually put out into the world that we might have been holding back, and seeing that you could have done it perhaps. So I'm going to start off with a little bit in terms of some of the basics that we need to understand as to how is it that we are going to, start a business. What are some of the important aspects in terms of what are the tenets of actually thinking like an entrepreneur? What would be important, and then get more into more details in terms of what the modules will as it goes along. There will be a lot of clear understanding for you all in terms of what you should what you should look out for, what you should do, and how you should go about. So let me get the screen started and screen fired up, like I always say. And here goes. So that's the topic, entrepreneurship today, and couldn't have been a more important and an opportune time to actually talk about this. So I want to start off by talking about some of the important trends, and more in terms of what would be relevant. How do you identify a business opportunity? Post that, we will get into topics like understanding the niches. What would be your unique selling proposition, often always called as USP? What will be an overall proposition, competitive analysis, product, brand characteristics, and so on. And then we get into distribution channels and technology for marketing, and then of course opportunities that are relevant today. So the fifth module is rather interesting, but you'll have to go through all the five to actually get to that stage. So let's get started then. Right. So that's the first module that we want to do, talking about market trends relevant to the entrepreneurial venture, and how do you identify an opportunity. So I think one of the most important things, is to understand what is entrepreneurship altogether, and why would anybody need to do something of this kind, and what is it that it would take. So this is a very interesting definition which talks about the ability and readiness to develop, organize, and run a business enterprises, along with all its uncertainties, in order to make profit. And I can tell you clearly that I was an entrepreneur. I used to work for one of the world's largest brand consulting enterprises. It used to be called Brand Union, and I used to head their practice in India and the subcontinent. But of course, then I realized that, look, I felt that I could do more. There are certain types of clients who are very attracted to us in terms of our own thinking and ability, and there could be a great opportunity for us to come out and try things on our own. But of course, it came with a massive bag of uncertainties and a lot of challenges. But it's been now 10 years, and we've done exceedingly well. We are definitely among the top few companies that actually consult now across many markets other than India. We also consult with a few governments, and we are doing a tremendous amount of projects. So that's, and definitely we've tried to look at what's beyond the regular silos altogether. But that's a little bit in terms of my own journey. So the questions to ask is that, one, how do you develop, organize, and run a business? And the biggest of all, how do you manage your uncertainties? So it's about starting a new venture. It's about, entrepreneurs are known for a source of new ideas. In fact, some of the entrepreneurs who have actually come and set the new standard, or set altogether the new wave, are some of the present entrepreneurs who have called, who are under the bandwagon of startups. And that's a very, very interesting thing. Some of them are, new ideas, innovators who bring replacing the old idea. So this is about, how the market can actually be disrupted in a certain manner, in which you start looking at, new ideas can, to become an innovator and disrupt the market, and, get done with the past. For example, I can tell you how the taxi business what altogether got disrupted around the world by Uber. And so Uber, what it did was to create an aggregator platform of various drivers that who wanted to join their platform along with a car. And they would provide a platform for a simple booking system between the customers as well as the drivers. That's all it was. And what is very, very interesting is that they don't actually own a single asset. The assets are continue to be owned by the entrepreneurs or the drivers in that case, and then they went on to earn far more than what they would actually earn. So that in one way, Uber has literally come and shaken up the world of what's called ride handling now. It's not, in fact, it is the world of mobility that they're looking at to change. And now they're starting to talk about air taxis, helicopter taxis, and so on. So in a nutshell, anyone who has the will and determination to start a new company, yeah, of course, he's entitled to, hold a lot of risk. So another great example is the example of Airbnb. This is also a business and an idea that came and challenged the status quo of large hotel companies in a manner in which small, uh, you know, uh, business owners or small, uh, hotels or these small homeowners could actually convert their place into a stay, and which in one way could actually challenge the larger hotels. And we, in fact, I own a Airbnb property, and I can tell you that, of course, it was ranked as number 10 in our city. And well, the kind of people that we attracted were some of the senior people in the industry who did not want to stay at hotels. They wanted to stay along with the family and, feel better. In fact, we were quite surprised that, the chairman of the German, one of the German defense companies actually stayed with us, and we were quite surprised. There was a fleet of, in fact, a convoy of cars who had come to pick him up, but he didn't want to stay at a hotel. He actually wanted to stay at somebody's house, and that was very, very interesting. That so, Airbnb looked at those different opportunities of people rather than what would have been a typical. So it's like, how do you actually challenge the status quo altogether? So how could you do this? One is a small business who looks at it from a an area or a city or a region point of view, and he is a person who is about more in terms of feeding his family than to make something to make a larger impact. So these are typical guys like a hairdresser, grocers, travel agents, consultants. Well, it depends on what type of consultants, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, and so on. So these are small business owners, and even that particular industry has now started seeing a lot of aggregation that is happening. For example, hairdressing. In India, we have an app called the Urban Clap, and instead of you actually going to a parlor or a hairdresser, you can fix the time on your phone, and you have a choice of various type of stylists who will actually come to your house and do the entire service without you even stepping out of the house. So they carry their equipment, they carry a mirror, they carry everything literally for that particular service, and it's absolutely brilliant. And they come and clean it up. They don't even leave the mess around. So clearly, that it's not just that it has to be a small business or a big business. It's about opportunities that you can find, even if it is small. For example, one of the topics that I would be covering the last is something on an idea called the cloud kitchen, which is kind of emerging as one of the most important segments of the food industry, especially during this time of COVID, primarily, wherein which people are very reluctant to go to restaurants to eat. So how restaurants can now start planning to become a kitchen that delivers. So they deliver the entire experience of that particular food in your premises. So they have now started moving towards not only delivering just the food per se, which used to be earlier like what a pizza company would do, but now more in terms of the experience altogether. And that's a great opportunity to actually contemplate. Some of the other ones which we are exactly scalable startup enterprise. Now here is where we are starting to see small business and some of the ideas that have grown in such a manner, who start spotting these scalable, so to say, business experiments or business or experimentals and so on. So there are some ideas around the what is currently happening is clearly around the aggregation idea. Aggregation could be, let me give you another example of aggregation. So in a city like ours, we have probably 500,000 doctors, of various kinds, who have got clinics, who have got smaller, larger hospitals, and all of that. But this is a time where people are so reluctant to actually go to the hospital or go to a clinic, including, for example, even if it's a dental cleanup, you're kind of reluctant. So what they've done is there is a platform for doctors, and this is a entire consultation model that actually happens with your phone. So without you stepping out of your house, you can have a one-on-one conversation with the doctor. I had it. So I got my blood tests done from a clinic, and very interesting, even the blood test comes home now, which is very interesting. You can call a broken time, they would come and check your fasting sugar, they would come and check your pp sugar, which is after your breakfast, and they come back and do all those ecg tests and all of that, and the entire test is sent as a pdf to you. Now what I did was I sent that pdf to my doctor and said that this is my report, without even moving out of my place. By the way, I've not moved out of my house because of all the concerns and everything. So I sent the PDF file of all the blood tests, which was quite good, by the way, to the doctor. And the doctor said, here you go. This is what you should be. You've done pretty good for yourself. I can see that you're, taking a number of steps a day. So you're roughly doing about 8-9 kilometers of jogging every day, and that's pretty good for you. But however, I think you should do your test again once in the next 3 months. And here are some of the pills that you might need to take primarily for your upkeep. So just imagine, this wasn't possible a few years ago, but clearly how they've gone on to create a completely scalable startup or enterprise, which we've understood. One end, there is the consumer who's very apprehensive about actually traveling outside and going out in the crowd, and whatever that could be, a lot of apprehension. So how they've actually built a model that can take care of yourself, including doctor services, hair salons, food, God, everything actually gets delivered. So how is it that you can actually create those enterprises? By just clearly observing what is happening in the community. Then comes the larger ideas, in terms of, the larger ideas in terms of what is a sustainable, new innovative products that can evolve. So clearly change in technology, customer preferences, new competition. So this is about a large enterprise, and I can tell you that we're currently working with a company in the large enterprise space, and there is a very interesting technology called the RPA, robotic process automation. This is very, very interesting. In fact, you would start seeing a whole lot of deployment happening within the next 1 or 2 years, primarily where there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of chunks of data which needs to be analyzed and managed, and that is actually done by a robotic process automation software. And that RPA can now spin off as large companies which are well, in fact, one of the Gartners, in fact, Gartner report compared the RPA to be the next Windows of the world, literally, in terms of what the competition could be. Then, of course, there is, so that's typically a large enterprise of people who want to make a massive difference altogether. Then the next comes is what's called a social enterprise, primarily who are not interested in actually making a commercial interest or a profitable interest, but they're more in terms of helping people. And we've seen a number of them actually come at this stage. One of the most important ones is it's called I'm not able to get the exact name, something about helping angels. Now, these are a group of people who've gotten together, about 10 or 15 ambulances, and they are helping people who are acute in the COVID to actually transport them to hospitals where there's a lot of reluctance, and because of the social stigma around COVID. So people are actually calling the, helping angels to come and help them transport people, to put them to hospital. And in case of, somebody died and there is a lot of, so to say, stigma in terms of, cremating the person or burying the person, they would actually do that on their behalf. And they've done a wonderful job. A lot of kudos to them. So that is one. Then the other end, we've seen people talking about helping animals at this stage. How is it that they could actually help? In fact, we went, there was a dog sick very close to our house, and we and of course it was being neglected, so we decided to carry it in our car and headed over to this, it's called CARE. That's the association that takes care of primarily animals that are in trouble, or abandoned animals that are in trouble. So social enterprises are around helping, with clearly without any motto. So there could be a lot of ideas that could come on the social enterprise side, that we should not always look for profit. Or on one hand, you could have a profitable enterprise as well as, social enterprise. So there is now something emerging of, developing. In fact, one lady has done an excellent job. There was an apartment very close by, which has altogether about maybe 300, 400 families in one large apartment. India is a massive place. We have everything in massive in size. So it's about 400, 500 apartments. And three or four of the families tested positive. Now, most of the food is actually, because they've cordoned off that particular area. So the food is actually supplied by a lady who gives the food at a subsidized rate, and at a very, very good food at a subsidized rate for all the people. And she's getting all the kudos for, helping those people at these troubled times. So what's most important is some of the characteristics that you might need to recognize yourself. And believe me, there is no inborn characteristics, or there is no characteristics that you evolve. I mean, characteristic is something that you can evolve over a stage. So it's about understanding, saying that, look, I have that gut feeling within myself that I have a wonderful idea and I want to take it forward. So one is clearly the ability to take risk, ability to go through the ups and downs of business altogether, because it could be good times, bad times, it could be troubled times, all of that. So you should clearly be able to understand the considerable risks that are actually coming when you start an enterprise. Then comes the innovation itself. What is the idea that you have? How is it that it can change people's life? What is launching a new product? How is it that it can, how is it that you're going to market it? And how is it that it's going to be valuable or economical to people who are going to buy it? Then, of course, the whole idea is that, look, uh, disruptions and ideas like this are primarily about how visionary you are. And I think the world has given far too many examples in terms of who are some of the visionary people. For example, the recent examples of what Elon Musk has done in terms of the Tesla. He started off by challenging the automotive empire with his electric cars. And he started off with a few cars, and now it has become the world's most valuable automotive company in the world, including challenging Volkswagen and Toyota, to become the number one most valuable company in the automobile business. So that is literally very, very, visionary in terms of things. That's what calls for leaderships, or that's calls for a leadership character. But that's about identifying and sticking with the core, saying that I'm going to disrupt this industry in a manner in which it's definitely considerable. And he hasn't stopped there. He went on to launch SpaceX, which is a brilliant, brilliant thing about how he would actually change space travel and space, missions in such a manner that it becomes cost effective. And I think with the launch of the new SpaceX, he's completely disrupted the industry that was always a NASA or somebody else. And I think excellent job in terms of what Elon Musk has gone on to do. But Elon Musk must be just one or two of them. There are hundreds of such brands that have now come into play, wherein which it could be just about anybody's idea. So it could be just about you. If you have a wonderful idea, what is it that you could take in terms of ability for risk? What is the innovation altogether all about? And what are the leadership qualities that you have to make this a reality? Some of the other things is to, being open-minded. It's about what is it that you would do in terms of being open-minded in terms of changing things. Now, one of the companies that I'm going to be covering over is a brand called Paytm. Now, this is a very interesting brand that has moved phenomenally in the it's called a fintech space, primarily understanding the consumer habits that were changing. And this started with the demonetization that happened in India a couple of years ago. And there was a move towards digital currency. And Paytm was one of the first companies to actually understand this change and start moving towards online transactions. So now most of India, I mean, a lot of Indians do not actually use cash. We use money from platforms, platforms like Paytm, wherein which it's a very, it's a digital currency as opposed to anything else. So to put it in simple terms. And I think now digital currency around the world is also catching up. One of the other important characteristics, you got to be flexible because the market situations can change and that can challenge you. For example, Uber, in spite of being highly successful and challenging the taxi world altogether, is facing a tremendous amount of difficulty right now because people are not willing to go out of their houses. People are not willing to go to shopping. People are not willing to go to movies. So rides have altogether dropped altogether. So that's a big challenge for them, and they need to figure out how they're going to be flexible and how is it that they're going to manage. And in fact, what Uber has done, especially in large countries where where they are tremendously successful, in India, they've started something called Uber Eats, which primarily is about delivery of food. So the same taxi guy, sort of dropping you place to place, is now talking about delivering food, and now they're starting off grocery. So it's because they clearly understood that the consumers don't want to move out of the house, and there are some we have ready-made cars, and maybe we could deliver groceries from the nearest shop. And of course, very clearly, what is the know-how that you have that will make you sufficiently differentiated from the rest of the people in the market? So these are some of the important characteristics saying that you cannot be a run of the mill, you cannot be a copy of a copy. You have to have something that is unique, sustainable, different, and something extremely valuable that people will recognize and pay for. Now, some of the important things, other than the fact that you have a great idea altogether, is that please remember a wonderful idea can create so much of employment, and that is something that I personally believe. And saying that your idea should not be just purely, profit oriented. You should say that the amount of employment it can create, the amount of value that it can create for the whole economy. For example, we have explored starting an industrial park in a Central African country, and clearly we could understand, instead of us looking at a highly profitable nature, one of the ideas that I proposed was that we could develop an agriculture produce processing facility, which could be the most important thing for the country right now, because agriculture produce is currently being used, but in a very, very minimal manner. But they have some of the fantastic agriculture produces. For example, they have cassava, pineapples, um, bananas, and these are some of the products that can be actually processed in a manner in which can create tremendous amount of opportunity for the agriculture industry to actually come up and bring in a lot of employment, fair price for the farmers, and of course products that can be exported and reduce the number of export dependency. So that could be an idea. So clearly, one is definitely about employee creation. What are the innovations? If you have a new product, what is the technology that it can create? How is it that can bring up the quality of the current delivery mechanism in such a manner that people start increasing the standard of living with that? And of course, definitely impact the society and community development altogether. For example, better education, better sanitation, fewer slums, home ownership, better agriculture facilities, better standard of living for the taxi drivers. It could be better standard of living for the hairdressers. It could be just about better standard of living for the restaurant workers and so on. There you go. I was just covering the next topic. And of course, innovation is such a beautiful thing that it never stops. So you got to continuously innovate yourself. So that would mean that you are researching a little bit more in terms of what could be done, what could be done in the future. For example, again talking about some of the research and development that we are currently doing for the same industrial park is about having the industrial park close to the coast and to the port, which will help us not only have ships that could tap into the marine resources of that particular region. It also can act as an important point wherein which the processing can happen, and from the processing the exports can happen. So clearly we started understanding how is it that we could plug in all these 3-4 matters, understanding how is it that we could develop this in terms of a complete set of solutions rather than just looking at it as an industrial park. So that's just one large idea. Now it's more in terms of research and development have tremendous amount of companies come up with new products, and new products which can make far more, bring about efficiency, bring about, for example, one of the biggest industries that are now starting to show a lot of interest is the green industry or the sustainable industry, and solar being among the top, about how is it that you can actually use the power of solar to actually power villages, power hotels, power resorts, and things like that, and bring in the efficiency of your electricity generation from a depletable resource like coal. for example, or petroleum. Now, please remember there is some amount of differences of being either a businessman or an entrepreneur. Businessman typically is a guy who runs an old business in a better fashion, or it could be he's a market player. He makes a place in the market. He takes less risk. He does more traditional and ordinary. He's more on profit, and his competitions are extremely high. Entrepreneur on the other side, he's a guy who's highly differentiated in the market. He has an exclusive idea. He's a market leader. He's the one who's going to create the market. His risk factor is equally high. His focus is on employee, customer relations, public, all of that. So it's about the entire focus of people altogether. And it's definitely if it's a disruptive idea, a disruptive entrepreneur, his competition is low. So you clearly want to understand that the difference between being an entrepreneur was being a businessman. Entrepreneur is the one who has a wonderful idea that can create a difference to a lot of people and who's willing to take risks, being unconventional, and of course, low in competition. So how do I identify one now? Typically, it's like this. This is, in fact, I did cover a topic called, consumer behavior, in which clearly there are some understandings in terms of what are the consumer behaviors that we could presently talk about and what are the differences that we could make. So how do you understand consumer behavior is covered well in the subject, and I would definitely encourage you all to take a look at that as well. Right. So this would spark some brain bulbs in you. One is you got to get inspired. One is identifying a problem, saying that, look, what is it that I could actually solve? Then you go on terms of researching what it is. That's then you start getting inspired, saying that, wow, there's actually nobody who's done it, and maybe I can do it like this. You would start researching, benchmarking different people who are there in the industry who have done some similar idea, and say that, look, maybe I could do it better, or maybe I could do it different in my market. And then you actually go on to brainstorm the idea, saying that, look, these are some of the aspects that I could have. This is how I would price it. These are some of the products that I could have. This is some of the services I could have. Then you go on to actually designing it. Designing is typically what you would call it. What's the brand all about? What is the value proposition? What's the pricing? And what is your go-to market? And then you start going on to register it, which is about building it, getting things done, and then start evaluating and testing. Maybe you test it with a few friends of yours, saying that, look, this is something that I have and I want to get your idea. Then you start, tweaking it a little bit, and that's where redesign actually comes into place. And then it's ready to share and ready to launch altogether. So this is some of the typical process, but, I wouldn't want you to, I wouldn't want you to, take it off a particular process. If it's a wonderful idea, start imagining at what it would be. How is it that, in fact, one of the best exercises that I would actually recommend is in the research phase is benchmarking, saying that who are some of the other people who have done similar ideas or ideas that are close to this, and how has it gone on to become successful. Now, this is a great man, and he's actually from Malta. And Edward de Bono, and he talked about lateral thinking. And it talks about how when you get an idea, what are the types of hats you need to, adorn. So the first white hat is about collecting facts about the industry. What is the size? What is the market? What are the people willing to pay for it? All of that. Second hat is about positiveness. It's more about the yellow hat, which is about what are the benefits? What is the positiveness? What is the value that you're willing to create? Third thing is the caution. That's the black hat, which is about criticalness, reason why something will actually not work. And please remember, it should be falsifiable. It should have evidence. It should have caution. So you should definitely not overuse it, but not underuse it as well. Then the green hat is about the creative. How do I make it creative, or what do I put it? What's the name going to be called? How is it that people will get attracted to that? That's about the ideas and concepts on managing perception. The blue hat is actually reviewing your thinking process, saying that, am I doing the right way of thinking? Make sure all the hats are being used, ensuring that, look, do I have the stamp of approval? And then the red hat is a very interesting thing, saying that, In fact, I would encourage you to read, a book called Blink, which is a beautiful book which talks about the gut feeling that you get. Sometimes your gut reacts faster than your head. So, in fact, feelings, intuitions, and all of that is actually, in your gut. And Malcolm Gladwell's book is called Blink, and I definitely encourage you to read that because that gives you a clear idea in terms of some of the important aspects that when it comes into a feeling, hunches, and intuition. So that's typically the red hats actually explained. So let's start off with the white hat, information, figures, and facts. The yellow hat is about the best scenario, benefits, and positive thinking. The black hat is about the risk, potential obstacles, and downsides and weaknesses. The green hat is about creative thinking, alternative solutions, redefine and develop ideas. The blue hat is about process, control, big picture, agenda, summary, the time management. And the red hat is about fears, impact on others, feeling, and intuition. So these are some of the hats that you need to actually adorn before you get into a venture. And this is literally a beautiful, beautiful method that Edward de Bono, who's a great Maltese, who's gone on to talk about this, and I think it's a brilliant, brilliant contribution to the world. So that ends today's topic. In the next topic, I would actually be covering a little more in terms of the customer niches and what is unique selling proposition. So I would definitely encourage you all to definitely think through the Edward de Bono's 6 hats. And primarily, if you have ideas, this is primarily a beautiful map in terms of how you could start pegging a certain few things in a certain ways to understand this is where I want to peg my solutions, and these are some of the hats that I could adorn and be a judge of my own idea altogether. So thank you all for attending this class. There will be some documents that will be downloadable, so that will be down below. And further, if there is anything that you would like to talk to me, I encourage you to drop me an email, look me up on LinkedIn or some of the other platforms, and I would love to get connected and talk to you about it and hear your opinions, thoughts, and ideas. So look forward to you all in the next session. Goodbye then.